how do you recover from a big hit mentally? And I think this is something that so many of our audience either have dealt with, are dealing with, or absolutely will deal with. If you're an unemployable creative or entrepreneur, you are going to get big hits. There is no question. If you step in the ring, you're going to get punched in the face, even if you're Floyd Mayweather, right? So I might just ask each of you, what if you think about big hits that have come in your life, what do you do to recover from those big hits?
I had a similar question during the week. It was a 22-year-old kid. Hope he doesn't mind me mentioning it, but basically saying, I want to change my life. I want to change my business. I've tried Amazon, hasn't quite worked. And the first thing that I said is, it took me a long time to realise, but it's normal. I see you, and there's nothing wrong with you. And it took me a long time to realise that failure is part of the journey. Right? So that's the first thing I'd say. It is all part of the initiation. And then it's small wins. It takes time to build confidence back, and it takes time to get small wins. But often we try and... There's a great book called The Gap and the Gain. And when we're kind of looking forward, we're in that gap because we're looking at what we don't have or where we want to go. And that gap is quite long. But when we look back on all our past accomplishments or what we've done to date, a failure is a badge of honour in my books, right? And that they should be celebrated. So looking back, it often becomes a little bit easier to see all that we've done and not the distance that we've still got to go. And then I think it's just the process of small wins. I used to have sales associates that used to come and want to become sales professionals when they were selling land. And that was one thing that I would make sure that I focused on with them is small wins, small steps at a time.
So that book was Gap and Gain, Gain for Nelly.
It's an incredible book about conditioning yourself to not always look so far into the future and close that gap between where you are and what you want by looking backwards at what you've achieved.
James, any tips?
Yeah, I've had, as we used to commonly call them, shit sandwiches. I've had more shit sandwiges than I'd care to admit. But as you get a bit more seasoned, when again to your point, when you're younger, it feels like a catastrophe. As you get a bit older, it's just like, okay, cool, whatever, you dust off and get moving. But to sit down and go, when you say I've had a bad loss or this, sit down and write down how bad is it really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, cause oftentimes you can catastrophize in your own mind and you can build it up to be this mental monster that's not really that big. Or talk to a mate or a mentor or someone and go, right, this is what happened. All the pieces of shit are laying on the table. How do I put them back together? Or do I put them back together at all? But also sit down there and go, well, what can I learn from this? What's the benefit in this right now that I can see, that I'm not seeing, that'll serve me later on? So what's the... And it always does come around full circle. You go, that was that, or could be a personal relationship that's fallen apart, could be a business. What am I not seeing that's the benefit in here right now that's going to serve me later?
Dr. John DeMartini does some great work on that called the collapse process.
Totally. And so what's the positive in it and what's the negative in it?
Because there's always both.
I did this with my mother last week, for example. My father passed away just 2 months ago. She was sitting down there a bit distraught. End of the conversation, it was like, wow, this is a whole new world. And that process is unbelievable. What are the positives? What are the negatives? And what am I not seeing right now that'll serve me later? So there's that. And there's also this, it's on my mirror in my bathroom, is this too shall pass. So whether you're going through an absolute shitstorm, know that this too shall pass. And when you're riding high, don't get too arrogant and ahead of yourself, because this too shall pass. Things are always peak and trough. They never stay stable or consistent usually. So just having those 3 tips, I think, is probably where I'd go when it all hits the fan, and it does regularly. I mean, so
in the famous words of Mr. Chow, but did you die?
Did you die?
That's Eric. Words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom. I posted this yesterday, actually, and success is stumbling from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm.
Yeah, I think that was a Gough Whitlam. No, not Gough Whitlam, Churchill.
Yeah, Winston Churchill, right? And I look at that, and I think people need to have a big enough why and vision. For me, when I come home every day from the office, from meetings, and I see my wife and I see my 2 kids, it reminds me every day of why I do what I do. I'm creating a legacy, and I want to show my kids what it takes to be successful in our own rights. And I think people need to get very clear on that. And it takes a lot of time to really sit down and do some deep work on what your vision is and what is your why. I think a lot of people's why is make money. That's not a good enough why. Money is a byproduct. So for me, another thing is having a very close-knit community of people that you can trust, that you can speak to, and you can be vulnerable with, right? All egos aside, put your ego on the shelf, when you're entering that meeting or that coffee, and literally be vulnerable, because to me, communication is everything. And we've all been in struggles, and you're not the only one. And another thing I think about all the time is similar to what James said. This time next year, you're not even going to be thinking about this.
Yeah.
That's what I always say. This time next year, it won't even be a thought. It's a thought right now, but you need to control it as best as possible by using some of these tips.
It was John from Arizona, was it?
Yep.
Exactly what he's done is a way to handle it. Reach out, and you've just had
And ask for help,
four
yeah.
guys share an opinion on it, and it kind of normalizes it.
Yeah.
There was a quote that I came across the other day. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is never permitted to prove himself.
Yeah.
And the obstacle truly is the way.
People have asked
what I
me
would
that
say.
before, like, if you could have a rich dad and just like not have done it, I'd be like, no way, dude. Like, who I've become in the process of coming from nothing, I wouldn't trade that for anything.
And to James's point, my why is who I want to become.
Yeah.
Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that episode of Unemployable. If you want to watch another clip, click here, or if you want to see the full episode, click here. Bye for now.